This is Shruti from Document 360, the co-organizer of this webinar. Thank you for joining this session today. Today with us, we have Corlynne O'Sullivan, a technical writer and experienced designer, Capgemini Engineering, Netherlands. She has diverse experience in content creation and user experience. Her expertise lies in technical documentation and UX writing. She takes pleasure in translating intricate subjects into comprehensible and accessible information, simplifying valuable knowledge for individuals to easily understand and apply. The topic for today is user research for technical documentation. In the session, she'll share UX-driven approaches, content structure, readability, vocabulary, content quality, and visual appeal that contributes to the overall usability of a system. In addition, the webinar will provide insights on practical testing methods that improve your documentation's overall effectiveness. After this presentation, there will be a Q&A session. So I would request to key in your questions on the Q&A platform here so that our team can collate and hand them over to us. Thank you. Corlynne, you can start the presentation now. Thank you.
Today I'm going to present user research for technical documentation and a quick overview. So I'm applying a UX framework, the Double Diamond, which helps for UX research, but can also be applied to user research. And using this framework, we have 4 stages. We have the discover stage, the define stage, the develop stage, and the delivery stage. And I will go into more details about these. Okay, so why do we do this? We do this to validate our documentation with users. This is very common in product development, but it's less common for documentation. So it is quite important. So I will show how to use the Double Diamond framework, and I will also go into its importance. So the first phase, we have the discovery phase. So during this phase, you're going to identify who your users are and your stakeholders, and what role do they play in the process. Next, you will go on to the next stage, which is down here. It's the define stage. And here you're going to specify their requirements, so your users and your stakeholders, and determine which approach is most suitable to meet their needs. Next, we move on to the develop stage, and here we're going to assess the usefulness of the chosen approach. And we're also going to validate variations to ensure we align with both our users and our stakeholders' expectations. Finally, we deliver. So with our stakeholders, we confirm a delivery. And here, by this stage, we have already developed our solution. And we also at this stage know that it meets both the expectation of our user and our stakeholders. So I'll go into the first phase, which is the discovery phase. So the discovery phase. So this is phase 1 of the Double Diamond, which is used a lot in user experience design. So during this stage, we're going to uncover insights and inform our documentation strategy. So how can we do this? We can do this by various activities, such as conducting user interviews and surveys to understand their needs. We can also do secondary research. So we can look into what research our company already has. So our product managers, or perhaps you have a design team and they will already have some insights, or even customer support will have some insights on your users and their pain points. We can also analyze existing documentation, usage and pain points. So perhaps you have already set up Google Analytics, or you have some heat maps if you're creating something like a user knowledge base or an API documentation. So then you might already be tracking how your users are interacting with this interface. And finally, we're going to identify key user personas for your targeted research. So at this stage, we want to know, who are you creating the documentation for? Is it a developer, or is it an end user, or is it someone like a service engineer? So this will also inform what approach you will take. So next, we move on to the next stage of the double diamond. This is the define phase. And our objective here is to refine our focus and generate ideas for our documentation improvements. So here we're going to synthesize our user research and findings to define our key challenges. So everything we've gathered from our user inputs and our stakeholder inputs, and also our secondary research, we're going to create our POV, which is known as our point of view, or our problem statement. And once you have your problem statement, you can collaborate with your stakeholders. So you might do this in a generative session, a brainstorming session. This can be in person, or it could be remote. If you're doing this remotely, you could use something like a virtual whiteboard. And these are quite common, so you can use FigJam, Miro. There's a couple of other options on the market. And during this session, you want your stakeholders to answer how might we questions. So you want them to generate solutions to the problems that you have discovered in the discovery phase and what you have synthesized. So your key problem statements or your point of view. And now finally, you can prioritize these ideas. So this is probably going to span over 2 sessions. So your second session, you're going to be prioritizing these needs. So this could take maybe perhaps 1 hour with your stakeholders, where you're voting on various issues. Well, actually now there are various solutions, so answers to your how might we. So here you're going to prioritize what's important for both your user needs to figure out, and also your business goals. So during this session, there's a couple of methods that you can use. One that's quite common is the high-hanging, low-hanging fruit. And what you're going to do is move all the how might we questions that you've generated on sticky notes into more of the solution space. And now you have, hopefully at this stage, some solutions, well, not solutions yet, but some key areas to focus on. So now what you want to do next is transform these ideas into tangible documentation solutions. So you have all of these how might we questions and all of these inputs from your stakeholders and also from your research, both with the users you have interviewed and the stakeholders you've interviewed, as well as the sessions that you've hosted. And now you want to look at how can you transform these into ideas. So what are your solutions for all of these problems? So what you might do is, if it's for a document, you might explore various ways to create that document. Is it better to do it like a tutorial? Should you create some FAQs? It's really about how should you format based on your research on what problems you want to answer. How should you format your document? And during this stage, it is really good to work closely with your subject matter experts. If you have a product manager, they will have something that they want to communicate already to the end user. So it's really good at this stage to work closely. Or if you're creating some FAQs, say for example for a knowledge base or for an API, your developers and as well your technical support engineers, they will already have those questions and those answers, and they will already kind of know how they can give you good insights on how you should format and structure those. And at this stage, it's also nice to prototype your documentation layouts and styles. And you can also test this. So perhaps you've been using a certain layout or style for your documentation, and you might want to switch that, or you might want to change even just the formatting or how you answer different questions. This is a good stage to look into exactly how you're applying different layouts and styles so you can prototype. You can also prepare maybe 3 versions of one document or 2 versions and test them against each other and see which one comes out with a higher rating or better understandability. You can do this with users, or you could do it with internal stakeholders as well. And then finally, you want to iterate on this feedback. So basically everything that you get. So once you've got your documents that you're going to test, you have 2 versions maybe, or even better, you have more. You're going to test these, and once you have feedback from both your internal stakeholders or your external stakeholders, you're going to iterate on this. So before you go into the delivery phase, you've already made some changes to your documentation based on feedback, and then you kind of know that you're hitting your documentation at the right point, that you're answering the needs. And the final phase is the delivery phase. So at this phase, you want to validate your prototypes, or you have already validated your prototypes with real users, and you've gathered these insights and you've also iterated on them. So you've made changes to your documentation based on the insights, based on inputs and opinions on actual end users and people who work closely with your users, so customer support, or people who have a good knowledge of your product, like product managers, owners, who can really help you answer what you should be showing and when. And then finally, you're going to finalize all of this documentation. So once you finalize your documentation, when you come to present it to your stakeholders, you can also back it up with all of this research that you've done, whether it's primary or secondary. This also builds a strong case for the direction that you've taken. And you also show the importance of really empathizing and understanding your users at this stage. Finally, you want to establish a communication plan for your documentation release. For example, you probably want your documentation to be released before the feature is released, and you also want marketing to release their communication about the feature before you release the documentation. So this also helps understand how many people are going to be reading the docs, how much interest is in this feature, and as well before you need to make sure that your documentation actually gets out before a service or a feature is released, so people know exactly how to use it. Otherwise, if the product or feature is released first, then you lose perhaps users because they cannot understand how to use a feature. So yeah, at this stage, timing is really key. So you have to work closely with your product manager and your marketing team to make sure that you release and you publish the documentation on time. The feature cannot be released before you've released the documentation. So next, to implement training sessions for support teams. So perhaps your product manager will do this. Perhaps your product manager will inform your support teams on what this new feature is about, but maybe not. And perhaps it's better actually coming from you, so you understand already all the troubleshooting, all the frequently asked questions. So once the feature is released, when those queries start coming in, they know, they have it already at hand where to refer users to. And then feedback for continuous improvement. What's great is, especially if it's released to beta first, perhaps you have a beta community, you can gather feedback here. So not only what is the feedback that users are giving to the feature, but working closely with perhaps designers, perhaps product managers, on what is the feedback to the documentation as well, because documentation should empower the actual product and the feature or the API.
On behalf of entire Document 360, I thank everyone who joined the session and hope it was a great session for you all. Thank you. We'll be back again with yet another session.